At 8:14, I'll call the regular meeting of April 26th for the International Falls Koochiching County Airport Commission together, and we'll start out by any public comment.
Well, I know that I'm in other business, so you want me to public comment now or wait till the business?
You can wait for the business if you want.
Okay.
Okay. And we have the minutes of 29 March. You had a chance to read them. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion and a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes of 29 March. All in favor, signify by the sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me.
Opposed? Motion carried. Financial statement, Kyra.
Nothing out of the ordinary. We had a couple of project bills for like SEH's last bill for phase 2, and then a couple that are for this upcoming projects. So other than that, there's nothing really out of the ordinary.
All right.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion
I'll second it.
and a second. Any discussion on it? Not I'll call for the sign. Those in favor, signify by the sign.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries. Now to the good stuff. Engineers report.
Good morning, everyone. Maybe we'll start with the terminal update. We have Bob Coors and Steve Trudeau online. Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Bob.
Morning, Bob.
So we did have, at the last meeting, we were discussing getting a connection to Ike, getting something scheduled for the roof repairs. And since then we did have another leak, I would like to get, I guess, an update on that, or if there's anything else going on there. But as of Monday, Steve Trudeau did set up the external site, and Mike has now access to those records that Steve Trudeau had posted there, but we have not as of today.
Okay.
Dean, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's correct. I did put in a phone message to Mike just to be sure he received the download and if he has any questions, and then to get back to me so we can schedule a follow-up, either Zoom meeting or in person, either one, and walk him through the timeline and where we're at to date, and anticipating roughly a month from now getting on the roof when it decides not to be frosty, and try to get some of those repairs started. Would appreciate Mike's insight and input on, what he might feel or see could be potential issues or problems that have caused some of the leaking to date. Be curious to see what his thoughts are, but yeah, more to follow. I'll wait to hear back from Mike and get that meeting set up. I did also contact all the contractors in the last month or so, a couple weeks. They are all still on board. We told them probably next week, first week of May, we'd like to kind of have a Zoom meeting with them just to plan what the process will look like when we do get up there, maybe third week of May. So that's all I've got for now.
Yeah, when he was on site, he had full access to the building. We provided a lift to get him on the roof. He went in the crawl spaces, etc. It looked like he did a pretty thorough exam. I had some dialogue with him. He promised the report, didn't give us a time frame on the report. But yeah, so at least we're making headway there and waiting patiently for his report to see what his observations are.
Who was he up there, or?
Would have been 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
And Thor, to follow up with Bob's question, can you give us just maybe a quick recap of what you saw in the last water intrusion or leaking. I think you mentioned it was on a couple of the metal columns, maybe in the lobby area.
Yeah, it's the water has worked its way to that area of the roof, and along that whole line of the overly simplified the whole line of the vertical pillars, the supporting pillars. That there's leakage in that area. You can clearly see it. The wood is getting more and more stained, and clearly, I'm assuming with the expansion, the contraction of the wood and the frames and what have you, that's getting worse, and then the gaps are getting larger. So, it's a quote unquote new area. It's not only is it getting worse, it's mitigating into a new area.
Okay, so it seems to be following the slope of those wood beams down to where they bear on the metal columns. And
Correct, and then
finds its way out there, I'm guessing, and comes down those columns. Did it appear to be, if you had to quantify it, was there, a cup of water? Was there a gallon of water? Maybe a total?
I'm guessing there was gallons of water.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, that helps. So I have nothing further, I guess, at this point, other than waiting for Mr. Johnston to get a hold of us. We'll schedule a follow-up Zoom, bring him up to speed, and start seeing if he's got some thoughts and some ideas before we do mobilize the contractors up to begin, any reconstructive work that's been agreed to thus far.
Thank you.
And I'm sending him an email right now just to see kind of where he's at as well.
Well, it should be nice to get it behind us, that's for sure.
I would agree. Very much so.
Anything else, Bob?
I think that's it. That's all I have.
All right, well, thank you, Bob and Steve. Moving on to the airside update, there's a memo in your packet. We'll kind of just go through the first few items quickly, not too much to report, so we're waiting for it to warm up outside. So the sun is out, getting quite a bit of daylight out there. Hopefully we'll get some warm weather soon. So both phase 2 and phase 3 are waiting for some turf establishment, seeding, and minor grading items. So those, I think we're looking for work in June. So working through those items. One significant thing on phase 2 is that the FAA is requiring closeout. Those grants can only be open for 4 years. So we are working with the contractor to get like a certified warranty. So we'll make sure that they're going to perform the work and we can close out that project next month. So you'll anticipate that. We're going to get them get them scheduled, and then very clearly what they need to do, because we do need to process the final payment, so we can process the closeout documents that go to FAA to close out your grant within that 4-year window. So there will be some activity at the May meeting on final payments, so we can really address those closeout items. So more to follow in May.
Okay.
And then same for phase 3. This was a 2020 grant, so we do have a full year on this one yet, but we're hoping to wrap up that work in June as well, once conditions are favorable. 2 different contractors in phase 2 and phase 3, so we'll address the issues with each of them individually. And for the runway and taxiway rehabilitation, runway 422, this one's kind of been an ongoing discussion with FAA and MnDOT. 422 is the crosswind runway, and right now there is no funding source to rehabilitate that runway. FAA says you need to have more aircraft that want to use or that require that runway. And then MnDOT is also kind of following that logic. International Falls does have bond funds that were, applied in 2020, and those bonds are set to expire, I think maybe this summer. We're trying to use those funds to help with the rehabilitation of runway 422. However, we're kind of caught in an area of, what was the original application. And so I think the story that we have is that we're trying to extend the bond funds to help an application process with MnDOT and the legal entity MNB to use the funds for whatever projects that you wish to do. I'll give you a little bit more flexibility in that. It's no small amount. It's about $1.2 million. The bond funds that were issued, I think it was close to 1.8 in total back in 2020. Approximately 600,000 was used on the runway project. So there's this 1.2 that hasn't been encumbered yet. We were talking with our legislative team, and they said nobody ever wants to give the money back. The legislators don't want to take it back. You guys obviously want to keep it. And MNB, they're just the legal people that somehow we got to try to make that happen. So we're working through that issue to hopefully get those funds encumbered on a project that you can use, so you're not spending your local money on different types of projects, and most importantly, just getting the bond funds extended so you don't lose that money. So the conversation will continue about 422.
Good.
The next project is the fuel farm relocation project. So we've been briefing you on this project for the last few months. Chelsea's done great work on getting the project out for bid following the last meeting. And we had a bid opening yesterday at 11 a.m. We received 2 bids, and the low bid was Minnesota Petroleum Services for $576,654.25. Of that, again, there's a lot kind of just smaller type projects that are going on. Inside that fuel project was also a de-ice pad project. So basically the site design is going to be big enough for the fuel tanks that operate the airport equipment, snow plows, the fire truck, different items like that. Also the fuel tanks for the aircraft. And then also there's going to be the de-ice tank that helps with a pavement de-ice applicator, which is also being acquired this year. So as part of that $576,000, that de-ice pad is also included in there. We're using CARES funds for the majority of this project, and I think we're ready to get started as soon as we can. I know there's some lead times on the tanks. Like if there's a lot of different contracts that we're kind of putting together to make the project happen. I think the one, item of caution is the CARES balance, which I think is somewhere in the neighborhood of $420,000. So there is a shortfall in the funding amount for this project. Typically, fuel system type projects would be funded at, as low as 50% by, MnDOT or FAA. In some cases up to 70%. So there is always a local share, but this local share would be approximately, with the engineering to support construction administration, I think close to $150,000. So that, I guess, is maybe the item for discussion. If that project is supported. Again, it is a needed improvement. The fuel tanks are the airport aviation fuel has been notified by MPCA that there's issues with the tank, and then relocating this has been part of the master plan efforts to kind of consolidate all of these items together with new state-of-the-art tanks. With the award consideration to Minnesota Petroleum for $576,654.25, there is a proposal for SEH to support that construction through construction administration, including quality control, material testing, site inspection, and just general operations and maintenance acceptance of the tanks and pad. And that amount is $98,800. So kind of a lot of information there. I'll pause for any questions for the group.
Go ahead, Kara.
Can we use any of the bill funding or ARPA or anything like that to help with that local share?
Not directly. The only thing that is eligible is the CARES funding that can be used for development, and FAA is requiring us to do a development addendum, I think it's called. So we have to do a bunch of paperwork to use the funds for that. There's 2 other sources, CARES in Carissa, or I'm sorry, ARPA in Carissa, and those are very specific to pandemic type repairs or maintenance and operations. And then the infrastructure bill, I don't think is applicable, right?
Yeah, the FA won't, both your infrastructure bill money and your regular FA money, the FA won't support fuel system projects with that source.
Even if it's directly tied to the maintenance of the airport. So it's a little bit of a loophole that the FA, so there really is no direct available FA funding source other than the CARES, which, thankfully we have about $420,000.
Do you want to touch on the MnDOT ask earlier to fund and like any?
So there is a possibility, and again, we don't have a commitment from MnDOT yet, but MnDOT did fund the design of the tank. In some cases, if they support the design, they're likely to support the construction. MnDOT is short on money, I think, like a lot of agencies these days, so they haven't committed to funding any sort of construction on the fuel or tanks. We're going to ask, for funding support from MnDOT to help with a portion of the fuel pad construction. And again, that is, leveraging that CARES funds, trying to say, hey, we're, International Falls is bringing $420,000 of their CARES funds, can you help with the remaining with a state grant? No commitments on that. I think it kind of depends at the end of the state fiscal year, which is June 30th, if they have funds left or not. I kind of see it playing out that way.
Kyra, are there any other funds that we'd have to cover that shortfall?
I'd have to look in the budget and see, but we put in funding towards our annual capital each year, and there might be some funds in there that we can utilize to help offset that a little bit.
Because it's basically something they're telling us we have to do.
Guaranteed, yeah.
We're halfway into it, got the tanks here and everything else. So it's,
Interesting tobacco, yeah.
and it'll be for the betterment of that whole area, moving it
Huge.
down, giving
Yeah.
you more room to park planes and get them moved around here too.
Absolutely. It's always been a choke point there.
Right.
You bet. Safety issue, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And close to the building.
Correct. It's right there.
So worst case scenario, Kyra, would be that we would have to ask the city and the county that they'd have to cough up a little bit more money, right?
I mean,
To a tune of about 150
well,
or more?
and so another way potentially, I'd have to look and see how it is, but with the budget, we budget for our airport operation and that sort of stuff.
Wait, sorry.
If we were to pay this out of the general account,
Excuse me.
and then, but yeah, I don't know if that's still gonna work, so
Mhm.
we'll have to look into that a little bit further. But otherwise, yeah, there'll be an ask of the city and county.
So that makes it interesting.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, what is the timeline on this? Are we looking at funding sources for 2024?
So this project is part of a 2023 FAA grant. The CARES portion of it can be, I don't want to say delayed, but it has a little bit of flexibility as that doesn't have a specific schedule. But the de-ice tank pad is part of a AIP grant that is due for applications in early May. So since it's all tied together, it's early May for the grant application is what we're tracking.
So in the event that the city and the county, end up struggling to come up with their share of the funds, I mean, what does that do with the grant? I understand how important it is, but I also understand that, we're already out of our budget season, and we're pretty well strapped right now. I'm not saying that we can't do it, I'm just saying that it's gonna be a struggle to try to figure out where that money's coming from in the middle of the fiscal year.
And I'll have to look at the budget again, because I think we put in some operational funding that we budgeted for this year, which all of our operations still should be able to be paid for through our ARPA, and the CRIS has already been used up, so we don't have that one, but we've got the ARPA and we've got bill funding left, so all of our maintenance bills should be able to be reimbursed through ARPA this year, so that might be a possibility to just run it that way. You know, if it's already budgeted through the city and the county, so then it's, you know, that funding is already allotted to the airport at this point in time, but I don't think I have my budget with me.
Well, do we have time to let this go till next month and figure that out, or is this something we have to make a decision on today?
If the city council could have, like, just have Kyra or somebody come and just give a presentation of what we're ultimately gonna be responsible for. We'll have a budget and finance meeting the second Monday of next month, and that would be before our next meeting. I mean, again, I understand how important what we're doing is and that we have to do it. I just think that we have to be pretty understanding of what the financial implications could be this year and moving forward.
I agree, Harley. It's unfortunate that we're this far into it and we finding out we don't really have the total amount of funds available for it. So. Especially when the tanks are here and everything else.
I would just suggest if it is at all possible to push this off until next month, if we can, or call a special airport meeting, at least so myself and the chair of our budget and finance can have an opportunity to work with the city to try to see where we might not have to even have a full council meeting, but just to see what options we have to be able to prepare to show the council at our next meeting. But it's hard for me to move forward with something knowing that we don't have the money immediately supplied for it.
Right, and I was
Understandable.
the same would go with the county too. You're gonna have to go back to county board and find out from your administrator there what
we have for funds available.
funds available too. So.
We have an idea.
I was waiting. A lot of whispering. Come on, guys. Hurry up.
You know, so there is components of this project that is tied to the FAA grant, which is due next week. So a delay in specifically the pad component affects the FAA grant cycle, which is important, I think, to make sure we meet that timeline. FAA has been flexible, but this year they're showing that, you know, they really want everybody to stick to their timeline. So I don't think that schedule is able to be moved. The way the project was bid, Chelsea's probably rolling her eyes at me right now, but it is so the fuel tank, that $576,000 pad, also includes tanks. These tanks are tanks for low lead in diesel fuel. What we could do is award the pad basically up to your CARES amount. That part is funded, and then the remaining, which would be the tanks, and those items would then be funded, maybe awarded contingent on funding. And that could either be through MnDOT, if MnDOT's able to do that. I know Laura may have an opportunity to see some MnDOT leadership here later this week.
That's my lipstick. Good, yeah.
Yeah, or through a city and county conversation that could happen over the next month or whatever time is needed. That way we get the pad done, which is the important part, and then the tanks then I think can be awarded as soon as the funding source is identified. That way you're not incurring risk. The contractor doesn't order the parts, but we're able to still move ahead with the schedule on getting the pad done, and it doesn't jeopardize the FAA thing. So this is contingent on the contractor being willing to agree to this. You know, I think either through MnDOT, I feel like there's a chance that MnDOT would support it. So that would provide at least some additional funding source. That way you're not exposing yourself because you do have a CARES balance. And you know, worst case, the tanks get removed from the project and funded at a different time when it is allowed in your budget. So I think that the key would be, you know, awarding the project up to the CARES balance, with the other remaining contract items up to the full 576, contingent on a funding source, either locally or through MnDOT. I don't know if that would, how that sounds, but it would allow the FAA portions to keep moving forward without jeopardizing your FAA grant, and still get the infrastructure in place to help with the tank placement.
Is part of the project removing the tanks over here too, or is that a separate?
That will be a separate project, and again, when you look at, you know, I think there's maybe FAA possibilities there. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Casey.
Yeah, we're kind of working with the FAA on seeing, you know, if they could contribute some to that, because removing the tanks over there, because there is above ground infrastructure, that does impede kind of the wingtip clearance of larger planes being able to get back there. You know, it's probably a couple years out till the FAA or other, you know, funding sources can support that. There isn't an urgency to remove those tanks, and Thor jump in here with additional information, but you know, the MPCA has essentially closed the tank that leaked, so it's fine. It can sit there. It doesn't have fuel in it. There isn't the urgency to physically remove it. They've done all the testing, and you know, it should be removed at some point, but that part of the project has less urgency. Is that
That's
accurate?
correct. And that's a great question.
And that was my concern.
Great
is
question.
that you'd still be able to fuel aircraft,
In the
even
interim.
if we don't get the tanks over here right away. You'd still be in business here. So.
Right, and that's and to what's happening right now is that in knowing that these projects are delayed, we're leasing a 5,000 gallon jet truck, our current truck is 3,000, because we're expecting a busy season. And we can't inventory the fuel with one jet tank, because with two jet tanks. It's one of the jet tanks that in the past that was leaking, and so we're anticipating the time frame, excuse me, of delaying in delays such as this happens every project, to get the fuel farm up and running. Sean mentioned earlier in his conversation that we are going to the Minnesota Council of Airport Operators meeting. Right after this meeting, we're driving to Alexandria, and these folks will be there, and we'll have some discussions and dialogue with them, and to see if we can't get some help. But I think that's a good suggestion. At least try.
And the way the state fiscal year works, you know, if there's no availability for funds this fiscal year, the new fiscal year 24 starts on July 1st. Mm-hmm. And the way the timing is going to work is that's probably when construction will start. So even if they can't fund it this year, if we're able to, you know, help them understand that funding in fiscal year 24 starting July 1st, that would also be equally as helpful.
That's some additional background. I believe MnDOT Aeronautics has what they've been appropriated. They don't have excess money, but they have a surplus in other aeronautics funding. So their funding source is all like user generated. So it's aviation fuel taxes, aircraft registration, all aviation related taxes and fees and registration is what funds the MnDOT Aeronautics program. They have a surplus. They need the legislature to appropriate that surplus so they can spend it. So I think everyone's hopeful that happens this session. It's working through. They have money. It's just not in their account to spend, if that makes sense. So I think we'll, you know, as the session, you know, wraps up here over the next month, I think that will also has a potential to increase their available funding.
So it sounds like we could make a motion to approve up to the approximately 420,000. Mm-hmm. And then
So moved.
That's great.
Well,
Sorry.
If I may say,
you just wanted to read that, Harley, or
Yeah.
you want to put a contingent in there or anything?
if I may offer
I
this.
missed what you just said on that piece, Brian.
I just think it behooves us to do that because it doesn't put us out of business. That was my
Keep pushing,
main
yeah.
concern, that we can get the
In
pad
sequence.
done, and then we can figure out the funding for the rest of it later.
Absolutely.
We'd still be able to function until we get that figured out.
100%.
And the project will still move forward.
Wholeheartedly
Yes.
agree.
Little delay.
Okay. So we have a motion to go to the 420, use up the CARES funds for the project, and we'll wait and see future funding to finish the project. So Harley's made a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second. Any more discussion on it?
If I may, the SEH portion of the administration, so that's also, I would say, in that excess category. So SEH would be willing to have that contract signed once funding is identified as well. That way that money can be used for, getting the contractor on board and making that contract. But just recognize that SEH, won't have services until additional funding is identified for that project. So that's, I don't know if that if you want a separate motion on that one, or if you want to handle it together, but. Yes. Yeah, and I think maybe the way to word it, again, as part of that $98,000, a portion of that is for the FA eligible de-ice pad. So a portion of that does have a funding source. So I don't know if there's a way to word it just that, the contract would move forward when funding is identified. That way we can move forward with the FAA portion for the de-ice pad, and that would allow us to have the reconstruction meeting and get things going. I don't know if I hardly confused everybody on that, but.
You got it in there, Kyra? Huh?
It's
To make
typical
it part of the motion.
of our projects.
All right. Any more
Can I
discussion?
add something?
Whoa.
I think we have a separate de-icing pad CA, Sean.
Okay. Thank you.
Good point, Chelsea.
You're welcome.
So disregard what I said.
Okay.
So SEH's contract will be contingent on finding a funding source.
All right.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you, Chelsea.
All right.
You're
Perfect.
welcome.
All right. I'll call it fine. All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed or?
No, he was,
Okay.
I hope.
He's delayed. He made the
Motion
motion.
carried anyway.
Well, we'll follow up with Thor at the conference. We'll put our best convincing negotiation skills together and hopefully have a good conversation with Linda.
Perfect.
The next project we have is the parking lot rehabilitation project. Again, this one was presented last month. Essentially a mill overlay over the parking lot followed by new parking pavement markings throughout. We have two phases, one in June, one in September to help with the parking situation. We're going to be creating some project boards to share in the terminal, working with Kyra to get some notices out on Facebook, whatever we need to do to say this project's coming, and then eventually we'll barricade off certain areas. And then a couple days before, as part of our project plans, we do have the ability to move cars with that. So we'll be presenting this more in detail in May on what that plan looks like. But in order to repair the pavement, we gotta make sure there's no cars there. So we'll do everything to keep people from parking there, and then we'll have a contingency plan to move a car should we need to. So more to follow on that in May, but I think the news for this month is that we did receive 3 bids. We had a bid opening yesterday at 10 a.m. There were 3 bids. Misabi Bituminous was the low bid at $315,000. $366,000. Chelsea, you'll have to remind me. I think that was below our estimates, and the other estimates were higher than our estimates. That's accurate?
That is correct.
Yeah, and then we had one bid for $750,000. So a little bit all over the board. But.
Wow.
We've worked with Masabi Bituminous at other places. They're very capable, and we do consider them able to do the work. So with that, this one is kind of split between FAA funding and state funding. So about maybe a little over half is FAA funded at 90%, and then 5% funded by the state, and the other half is funded purely by the state at 70%. So that we do have funding sources for both of those projects. I'll pause there for any questions.
Do you know which half you're doing first, or what direction?
Chelsea, do you recall what half we're doing first? I believe it's the side over by Einerson's.
Yep, that's the first half.
Great.
Okay. And I'm assuming we need a motion to proceed with that, so.
I'll make a
Got a
motion.
motion? And a second, any discussion on it? Call the question, all those in favor signify by the sign.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, move ahead with that one.
And the second portion of that is SEH's ability to coordinate that construction and monitor it and help with moving the cars around and for both the June and September work, as well as FAA grant management and closeout. We have a proposal for your consideration for $71,000 to help with that project.
Okay. So we'll need a motion for that. 71,000 for engineering.
Make the motion. I'll second it.
And a second. We have a motion and a second in discussion. Call the question, all those in favor signify by sign.
Aye.
Opposed? You got the job.
Thank you. Well, as if that isn't enough, we also have the de-ice tank, equipment pad, and storage tank, which I've alluded to a little bit with our fuel pad. The actual pad that the de-ice tank will sit on is bid as part of that fuel tank project. But we also help the airport procure the tank itself and a de-ice truck and applicator. So with that, we have, maybe I'll kind of break that down into the different pieces, since the FAA didn't make this one easy for us. So the pad itself is already considered as part of the fuel tank project. The tank itself, so the storage unit for the pavement de-ice fluid, we elected to just go out and get quotes for the tank, since it's a very specific item. We had various metrics that we wanted to make sure that we asked for. So those quotes are due on Friday. And I think we did receive one quote, Chelsea, is that correct? I suppose we can't say anything.
Yeah,
we can't say anything about that now yet,
Yeah.
but we're receiving those quotes on Friday for consideration. In addition, typically the FAA allows the airport to get equipment off of the Minnesota State bid list. However, this specific piece of equipment, FAA did not allow that, so we had to publicly advertise and bid for the vehicle as well as the de-ice applicator equipment. Those bids are due on Friday as well. So we have two more components that are coming in as part of this project. This whole collection, the pad, the tank, the truck, and the applicator are all FAA eligible at 90%, 5% state funded. So the one, I guess, hiccup, if you'll call it, is we're going to receive those bids on Friday, and then we need to turn around our grant application next week. So I don't know if there's a way to have some collection of this team accept those bids and move forward until a formal decision can be made at the May meeting, or how you want to handle that specific component. But we will need to apply for that grant next week.
We could probably make the motion contingent that it's not over and above what's going to be covered, correct?
Yep, I think that would be acceptable.
Anybody wanna make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion and second that, we approve the bids as long as they're not over what the estimate for the amount of funds that we have available.
Okay, yeah, that, I think that would work. Trying to think if there's any clarifications we can add, but I don't know, Kara, if you have any thoughts on it.
No, maybe, once the bids come in, if you can just let me know, and then I'll send it out to the commission, just to say, hey, this is where the bids came in, this is what we're expecting for costs and whatnot.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, and if there's an objection, I guess, we can
Then we
hold.
At least we're not putting ourselves out there at a risk of having to
Come up with a bunch of
come up
money.
with funds again or whatever.
Yeah. And this would purely for the grant application, and then you would consider the actual contract awards at your May meeting.
Okay. So that's the way the motion's gonna read. Any more discussion on it? Call the question, all those in favor signify by the sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, so we can move ahead with that.
And the last major item, I promise, is the SEH portion to help with the pad, the tank, and getting the equipment here and inspected, and managing the warranty and the pay applications for that. So we have an SEH proposal for construction administration at $35,300 to support this portion of the FAA grant.
Okay.
And again, that would be funded at 90% FAA, 5% MNDOT.
All right. Is there a motion?
I'll motion it.
Second.
I'll second.
Motion and second to move ahead to pay SCH the $35,000 for construction engineering costs. Any more discussion? Not. Call the question. All in favor signify by the sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried there.
Next one is just a real quick update. The FAA has, is ready to sign and approve the airport layout plan that was done as part of the building area master plan. And we're just at the point of circulating it for signatures. So I think Kyra has the PDF. They are adopting an e-signature process on this. So she'll share that with the chairman for signature, and then it'll route through MnDOT and FAA, and that project should be fully wrapped up.
Perfect.
The next few are just updates, general aviation ramp lighting improvements. I think we're expecting light installation here within the next month or two. And then there'll be an acceptance of that project and final pay application, most likely at the June meeting. The TSA improvement project, working with DHS and TSA, local TSA, just to make modifications to the baggage screening area. So that project is moving along. The next step is have SEH on site, and then creating a bidding package to have a contractor come in and make those modifications. So more to follow on that at the next meeting. That's just a brief update. And then the funding and grants, as we kind of alluded to, that FAA grant is due next week. We anticipate sending that in May 2nd. So we'll work with Kyra for signatures. So you might see some paperwork early next week. The CIP updates is all projects that we've talked about, just kind of succinctly showing what we're up to with potential projects in 2024, and we'll save that update, I think, for a future meeting as we look at the budget for next year and different projects that the Airport Commission would like to consider. No specific public involvement, but we will have that piece in May about the parking lot and helping develop a plan for that. And just the two items that we're tracking is the terminal electrical improvements. So still working with Thor on any sort of modifications that we need to make any improvements to the electrical system. And then the PFAS testing, which now that things are melting, NPCA will be all over Thor and his team to send in his samples.
They've already started.
We do have an FAA coordination meeting on May 4th. If anybody's looking for something to do, you can come and check in with the FAA with us. But that is our updates. I know it was quite a bit this month, so appreciate all of that.
All right. Thank you very much. Now we move on to old business. the TSA security upgrade requirement.
Our favorite subject.
And that thing is all over the board.
It's all over the board, yes. If I may. Thank
You go right ahead.
Thank you. Brian is literally this is the core of the whole discussion for the airport. Obviously, is where we're at with the future air carrier for the International Falls Airport with these TSA requirements, the ongoing discussions between Delta and SkyWest Airlines. I sent out to the group always just whatever information I'm getting from SkyWest or TSA with both Brian and with Randy Down, the station manager. Kind of the latest flavor in the last couple of weeks. I'll just read it quickly. I handed it out to you on April 14th. I received this email from Daniel Belmont, SkyWest Airlines. It says, "Good afternoon. I hope this email finds you well. I'm reaching out to all our EAS community this afternoon to provide a brief update and request. Our challenges with getting commuter authority approval for our Part 135 airline, SkyWest Charter, are ongoing. We submitted our application to the Air Carrier Fitness Group about 10 months ago, and we are still waiting on approval. SkyWest Airlines Charter will be placing bids for EAS. However, without commuter authority approval, our proposals cannot be selected by the DOT. SkyWest Airlines, our Part 135 carrier, will not be in position to place EAS bids, i.e. International Falls, for the foreseeable future, so it's critical that the SkyWest Charter receives commuter authority as soon as possible. If SkyWest Charter cannot place a selectable proposal, then many communities could be at risk of losing jet service. I want to strongly encourage you to reach out to the Air Carrier Fitness Group and urge them to get our application approved quickly. Please consider contacting Carol, etc., etc. Thank you." With that, and did a little more research, one of the headwinds that's going on behind the scenes fighting this air taxi 135 certificate is families. It's interesting. It's always politics. And this article is from April 17th. And to make a long story semi-short, what's going on is the families from Flight 3407, which was an accident in 2009 in East Coast, New York. And overly simplified, what happened was two crew members took a perfectly good aircraft and literally let structural lighting get on the airplane. What happens at times, rare but does happen, that you'll have the unlucky draw of you'll have a subpar captain and a subpar co-pilot. Their flight records and their historical data will show that they had trouble through flight school, trouble with flight checks, etc., etc., etc. And just exactly like the Yellowstone accident, identical. Both of those pilots had very, very sketchy records. In this case, same thing happened. Both were just borderline making the cut every time, and overly simplified. They take a perfectly good airplane. Well, they did, and they killed the captain. Killed everybody on board without question. His actions were totally unbelievable, as the report states. One of the things the families are fighting, and they have unfortunately they have a position at the table. They're talking about they're fighting against, and in the article it specifically states SkyWest Airlines, among other players, says, well, my God, they can't reduce these requirements because it's a safety issue, da. But the part that they're not leaving out in their argument is as follows: that the captain had 3,300 hours and the co-pilot had 2,200 hours. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of time for flying a commuter. They were from a time perspective, they were more than qualified. So that's what's happening, and that's some of the headwinds going on behind the scenes. Credit to Brian for initially about we don't know what's going to happen with this. We literally don't know. We absolutely do not know, and we're meeting with TSA next month, and they're very well aware. I have clearly shared with TSA. We're not doing anything. We're not going to upgrade until we get some. We can't spend these money. It's ridiculous. We don't know what's going to happen after January of 24. No one knows, frankly. So it's a moving target. I had a conversation with Stauber's team. In fact, it was just yesterday. Yes, it was. And they're making some headway on the TSA side of things of increasing the seat number from the 62 to maybe 100, and or just giving us DRO, designated ramp-side authority, so we can have a person there, etc. That's an easy way to do it for the whole industry. Frankly, they should do it that either way. But that's where it's at, and so I wish I had better news for the commission and to say, we've got this figured out and what's going to happen. We don't.
Yeah, and for clarification for
Please.
you two is
Yes.
that SW that they're trying to go is basically to take the CRJ 250 seat and make it a 30 seat plane.
Excellent.
And that way they can use a 1,000 hour pilot versus a 1,500 hour pilot.
Plane, just a few
Same
seats less.
plane, but because it has fewer seats, they don't have to have as qualified pilot to fly it. And that's what they're trying to do. And that's what this family is saying, no, that's sacrificing safety, to try and fly these planes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a couple of congressmen that they've got that are on their side
Exactly.
and are saying they're not going to let this happen.
Correct.
And what SkyWest is saying, if that doesn't happen, they aren't going to bid on our EAS to have a jet come up here.
Exactly. Thank you for throwing that in. Excellent.
And that's
Yeah.
where they want to bring the 7 or 900
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that.
Right.
But then they're saying it's going to cost you $1 million to fix up your security.
Absolutely.
You got to tighten up the fence all the way around. Everybody's got to get sight of badge. Blah blah blah.
It's
amazing.
literally insane. It's crazy.
And then in the same breath, then they're saying too that the big plane was only going to be a 6 to 9 month deal.
Correct. Right.
So you're going to spend that, and then they're going to pull that, and we may end up with turboprops in here, 19 seaters like we used to have.
You're doing great. Exactly. Yep. And so it's and just yesterday I had a Zoom meeting with the local airline service action committee group, the group of 9 airports in Minnesota Scheduled Care Service, and they were at the meeting in Alexandria at the convention, and that's the number one topic, for Brainerd, Hibbing, International Falls, Bemidji, ET River Falls. This is we're all in that same.
Right. We're all in the same boat.
We don't know what's going to happen. Hibbing, yeah.
So just stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah, but that's where that's at. So any questions or thoughts?
Because Thor's been getting an email about once a week, or if not more, and he forwards it to me. So.
Yes, thank you.
Plus, I do some reading behind the scenes.
Exactly. Yeah,
On our end.
it's almost fictional. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, enough on that, huh?
Enough.
Any new business?
Yeah, let's run right down. Yeah. We talked to Roof Leaks. We talked to the COA meeting. My report is basically intertwined with what's already been shared. I was talking with Ricky before the meeting. It's in my notes about the fire truck. We have our new fire truck up and operating now online. So whatever discussions or dialogue needs to happen between the city and the county and rural and the fire department, whatever, and your storage and what have you, that however that wants to be done, and the groups want to get together, we're
Ready to go.
we're ready to go.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm. So we're ready to go there. So
I'll talk with them later on today,
please let us know.
then get back to you.
Thank you. Good. But that's all I have at this point in time.
Okay, nothing else in managers report?
No, I think that's it. I think it pretty well got covered. That was my notes. That is it. Just thankful that it's finally done snowing, at least for a few days. We'll see it. And keep going,
Sounds good.
yeah.
Secretary's report.
Miss King.
Not a whole lot. Employments are in the packet. Again, last month we were up. Not a lot, but we were up.
Well, we had a Sun Country flight, so.
Yes,
you go.
so that'll help too. I was contacted by Billy Boyd of Hazelwood Corporation, which would formerly be Tyson Vending. They have had some requests or are thinking about putting an ATM machine within the terminal. There wouldn't be any fee or anything to the airport for them to do so. And the airport would actually get a portion of their card user surcharge. Let's see what would be. So the commission would get 50 cents per transaction that would be paid back to the commission. So it's kind of a win-win for the airport, and I know I've had some questions of, you know, there being an ATM machine within the terminal and whatnot, so it's up to you on how you'd like to proceed.
Do we need to have a motion on that? I mean, is it something we can just do, or?
It's up to you. It never hurts to have a motion.
All right.
I'd make a motion for that.
We got a motion and a second to allow the old Tyson vending to put an ATM machine in here. Any more discussion on it? Call the question, all those in favor, sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll have an ATM machine then.
Okay, I will let him know. Next, I was contacted by Nikki at, the Rain Lake Gazette, Cherry Road, and they are wondering about the airport running some digital ads. We have some digital ads out there, but not through the Rain Lake Gazette currently. There would be some funding available in the budget if you chose to give it a try and see how it would work, so.
It's a pleasure. How much are we talking, a couple hundred?
Yeah, if we went with the block ads, it'd be $150 a month.
And that's in the budget.
Yep, we've got some funding available.
More?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Motion
That's
and
right.
a second.
Yep.
Go ahead with the advertising. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor, signify by the sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Go ahead, Kara.
That's all I have.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
Whirlies?
You're next.
Great. Last meeting it was discussed that Whirlies was gonna be not renting because their son's business. So a couple days later, I was notified that no, we were gonna stay in the rental business,
All right.
which would be great, yes. And then however, yesterday I was notified that we're gonna have a meeting tomorrow to discuss the business. Apparently insurance is going up, August 1st maybe, I'm not sure what, but, so right now it sounds like till the end of July, and I'll find out more tomorrow at this meeting.
Okay.
But the new owners have been on premise, I'm not sure what the sale date is yet.
So it's a good deal that we're still gonna
It
have.
sounds like a
the
good
cars.
deal that it is
Good.
gonna go through, so it will no longer be Whirly Motors in the near future.
Good. At least we'll still have rental cars.
Yes, till the end of July,
Okay. All right.
maybe hopefully further.
All right. That's a good thing. Anything else to come before the meeting?
No.
If not, stand adjourned at
Next meeting?
9:12.
Next meeting?
Oh, next meeting, there.
What do we got? May
Already made.
24th? Not yet.
31st? What works for everybody?
Either one works for me.
24th or the 31st, whichever one works best.
SCH have a preference?
I don't have a preference.
I can make it work.
Can make it work? So can I.
8 o'clock's easy.
Go 31st?
Okay.
Okay.
8 a.m.?
8 a.m. Be there on time.
No sleeping
Is that on your
in.
calendar?
Thank you.
8 o'clock. That'll work. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.